All right, perfect. Welcome everybody. This is episode 32 of the Nutanix Weekly podcast. I have Jaira Cox here, my co-host. How are you doing today, Jaira?
Good, Harvey. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing pretty good. Lots of balls in the air and just working to make sure that I catch them all as they come down.
Yeah.
hopefully with my hand and not my head.
Being busy is satisfying. The wrong kind of busy is frustrating. So hopefully it's the former for you.
I will say it is a very healthy and unhealthy combination of both. How about that? No complaints, though. No complaints. Making it happen.
Thanks for making the time for knocking out a podcast here.
Yeah, man, absolutely. We have today.
Come on back there, Harvey. You just muted yourself. I'm anxious to hear. Today we have.
It's that kind of day. I don't even know what I pressed or how I pressed it, but okay. So we have a blog today around Nutanix Frame and security for Nutanix Frame. So definitely a topic. Security is definitely a topic overall, period. But being able to jump into security for Frame specifically is, I'm sure, a topic that a lot of people would want to hear more about. So happy to discuss it today with you, Mr. Jaira. So we'll jump right in.
Yeah, man.
We'll start with, the easiest of things for those who are just joining us for maybe the first time, or maybe this is their first or second episode. What in the world is Nutanix Frame?
Yeah, man. So Frame is our desktop delivery tech that lets us provision desktops and then give them to end users, whether they need a full desktop, full on browser in a tab, or even just an application, right? Put just the application in a browser tab for them, or even on certain thin clients as well. So desktop and application delivery technology. A lot of this, though, even applies broadly to really EUC desktop delivery of any flavor, right? So the let's see, to contextualize this article, right? It talks about, it's pretty common for EUC for broad pools of users, right, to use non-persistent machines. It goes back quite a ways in the industry, right, to say when a user logs off and is done with that session, we can throw that desktop away. We don't need to hold on to it. We can actually roll that back and blow it away back to like a known good state, like back to a template or an image.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you.
So the benefit of that, right, can be that the user can't make changes to that desktop, to that VM, that will persist, right? Non-persistent. It's right there in the name. It does what it says. So of course it's established, right? The way this article starts, and it's true, right, is that just because we have users on non-persistent desktops doesn't mean that they can't do any harm whatsoever, right? Like, in fact, even just thinking back over this past year, tons of articles have come out that says, patch those domain controllers right now. Exploits are in the wild that can let a user escalate, even terrifyingly, to domain admin level credentials, with certain exploits in the wild in a Windows environment, right? So, guess what? Your domain controller is very persistent, right? I can do things to them that would persist even from a non-persistent desktop.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's not a Frame particular thing, right? That would happen on a physical laptop, right? Or delivering desktops via any technology, right? Windows gonna Windows. So we join the story there, right? Around, of course, non-persistent desktops are a thing, but this is highlighting a new capability coming to Frame, or here now in Frame, that lets us for non-domain join users, right, where I just want users to get a desktop and I don't need the Windows session logged in as their AD user, I can now lock them down to a non-administrative user. So they can only do non-elevated things within that already temporary. It's already going to blow itself up when you log off VM. So then that further constricts, like, what can I do as a bad actor on the network if I were to get onto one of these desktops maliciously, and that's, or even accidentally, right? Because who knows? Phishing is a thing, right? Phishing is what it is because of not user intent, right, but just exploits or lack of user education. So that ability to say I can put even more bumpers around a user on a non-persistent desktop is pretty interesting, right? So I can lock down what they can do within that desktop.
Yeah, and I mean that's a great use case from a security standpoint, because again, you already have non-persistence in place, which is limiting your exposure to something that would be on that desktop, live on that desktop, and kind of try to propagate itself. But again, being able to go a little bit further and make it so that the piece around attempting to propagate itself is further protected against as well. So, in essence, even if you did end up with something, you're sort of trying to confine it to just that one non-persistent desktop, which would be great from that use case as well, because after you reboot it, ta-da, it's not there anymore.
Totally. Yeah, right. And we can zoom out one tab here, right? One click and think, I already need to have all my virtual desktops in a part of my network that I probably don't trust, right? That's like, it's about as dirty as like raw internet in some ways, in terms of when I evaluate the security posture of various portions of my network, right? If I can let users get there, it's probably not a trusted segment of the network anymore, or it shouldn't be, right? Or we need to be thinking about how do we get to that kind of state in our network design.
Yeah, it's funny. I love that you said that. I thought I was the only person that called it the raw internet.
Unfiltered, man. It's just I don't even see the matrix anymore. I just see ones and zeros and malware, exploit.
The internet.
I mean, gosh, what was the soundbite? It was like 20 years ago. Let's see, 20 years ago was 2001. XP was a thing. Yeah, I think it was like 20 years ago, right? You could like plug an XP computer into your cable modem provider, no router.
Dude, 5 minutes.
Yeah, 4 or 5 minutes, and that thing was owned, right? Burn it down, repave it, like gone.
Yeah, that I remember actually having to do that to prove what I was attempting to make a point to for a couple of people, just around how quickly things like that can happen. And yeah, it was literally like 5 minutes, and until things were happening and traffic was flowing, and oh look, you have all of this data moving back and forth between this IP that you've never hit before. It's a brand new machine.
Totally. I mean, this is a problem that like Frame, or actually any desktop delivery that Flow solves very well, no matter what's still in your desktops, right? If you're using Flow with Nutanix, we could write a default deny. Like if you're on this desktop, you might not get any internet access, right? And then based on your AD logon, maybe we'll change your microseg firewall around your virtual machine to say, now you can get to certain stuff. Now you can get out to the internet or do certain things. Role-based access almost for the network that changes based off of who's logged into the virtual machine. Other ways that you could do what we're saying and create that untrusted part of your network, but then create pinholes based off of user logon actions. The article goes on to remind us that you're not saved here just by only doing application delivery, right? If your application has like a file open dialog box, then I can probably walk around and find other things that you didn't mean to give me in that published application.
Absolutely.
And break out of it, right? So this is, it's belt and suspenders, right? Why would I want to run as a non-admin when I'm publishing apps? Well, what if those aren't the only apps that your users are running on that desktop, right? So wouldn't it be better if they were therefore unable to elevate their session as they're running any app, right? Whether it's the intended or unintended applications.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's something that I think a lot of people need to make sure they're paying attention to as well, because, something that seems as Notepad will allow you to do anything and everything on the computer, as long as you know what to do with Notepad. So this seemingly limited application will allow you to do anything that you want to do. Same with things like command prompt, which I know a lot of people are, more prepared for and more focused on. But I mean, if you just have Notepad, and command prompts not isolated in any way, you can use Notepad to open command prompt. Same for Windows Explorer, same for, to your point, any app that gives you file open, because you can just go tell it to open some what that application would normally open. So yeah, 100%, need to make sure that you are limiting things as much as you can to give the users what they need access to, but only what they need access to.
Yeah. Yeah. The limitations we can put in place serve well-behaved users and the other kind, but we want them for both.
Yes. Yes, that is 100% true.
And you would use this, with defense in depth, right, around, do I need a firewall around my end user computing environment, right, to manifest that lack of trust of the environment, or do it in software, right? Do it with microseg, do it with flow. If I wanted to do that, how do I want to isolate that part of the network from my sensitive applications? How much do I need to be, worrying? I can think of lots of ways that I would make this a layer of my defense in depth, right? Do I need to be looking at what DNS queries are happening in this environment? I probably do. Is that a big pain? Yes. But it's also like, how does malware get in my environment? How does it spread? DNS is a huge part of that, right? I need to be filtering that, watching those logs. Geo-blocking could be a one valid aspect to think about. Where can I connect to from within this environment? So, I think it's a great article and an interesting reminder about, reminding us what are we not commonly thinking about as we design security for an EUC environment.
Right.
So then, if I want to channel my inner Andy, right, and
I knew it was coming.
give him a voice, right, for in his absence here today. Why would I care about this as a business owner, right?
Right.
So, what do you think, Harvey? I'll throw to you there.
So why would you care about this as a business owner? The main thing there is, as a business owner, one of the most important things that you can have to make your business run, to be, different or better than the competition, and to, be able to continue forward and have, name recognition and things like that, is your IP, your internet, your intellectual property, your files, your data, your procedures, things like that. Those are all things that you want to protect and kind of make sure that you have those locked up and kept under lock and key. Being able to secure your environment, make sure that that continues to happen. If you've got, security holes and things like that users can, I hate to use the word exploit, but I mean, really, that's valid in some cases. But if a user stumbles onto, even just stumbles onto files that they should not have access to, or things that they should not have access to, you have no idea whether or not they're then doing something with that data, or if their machine has been compromised in some way and somebody else is doing something to that data. So, you definitely want to do your best to secure the environment and, test and make sure as a user you can't get to the things you're securing against. I have lots of conversations with people who say they put all kinds of security in place, and we're so resilient, we're so secure. I'm like, oh, that's great. When's the last time you logged in as a user and checked that? And they're like, well, I didn't do that. I put it in place, so I know it's there. Yeah, it's not that simple. You need to log in, check as a user, see what you have access to, see what you don't have access to, because ultimately that's what you're protecting against. And to your point, Jira, you're not just doing it for the users who would do right 99% of the time, or even the ones that would do right 100% of the time. You're doing that for the bad actors that come through by way of a user mistake or, something of that nature, where their payload in, or, they have remote access or key logging or something like that, or be able to sniff the network, things like that. make sure that you are securing the environment to the best of your ability to make sure that you're protecting that intellectual property. That, I guess that would be probably the number one thing I can think of to start with.
Totally agree, right, man? I mean, checking your blind spots, right? Proving, verifying, not just assuming. 100% would be part of that security posture, and maintaining it and enhancing it, right? And even security posture itself has a life cycle, right? It's not an event;
Absolutely.
It's a philosophy. Yeah, right. And then just, I mean, to go like almost possibly too broad, like technology just carries risk. All technology carries risk, right? Like unless it's unplugged, sitting in the corner, LEDs turned off,
right?
It's probably exploitable in some way, right? And so then the job you and I do every day is how do we design for mitigate those risks, accept certain risks, right? Like we just want to allow end users to have remote access to our environment, right? It's part of how we're going to do business. But how do I decrease risk while maintaining the value of a given solution, right? Like end user remote access. And that's the value, right? I think to the business is being able to preserve value, increase security, reduce risk.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, to your point, it's a continuum, right? This is not something where you get to quote unquote the end and yes, my environment is secured, because that's just not how it works at all. You continue to harden, you continue to test for holes, and you continue to update as vendors and manufacturers release patches and release new features. Because a lot of times with those new enablements, there are moments where things don't function as intended, or things function better than intended, which is still a problem. So you definitely want to approach this as if it is something as a life cycle, like you mentioned, so that you're continually testing, you're continually updating, you're continually securing. So that you never get to the point where what you've secured is basically stale. Because in those moments of staleness, is where you are sitting vulnerable for an attacker. We've talked a lot about security overall in the podcast, and I'm sure that anybody listening to the sound of my voice right now has heard and or seen some security issues, security patches, or things like Windows viruses and things that come out. A lot of times, you'll go and look, and if you're updating your environment, you're like, oh, well, they put a patch out for this in January. It's October. This virus can't harm me, and you still yet see many people and companies that it's still harmed. And it's the question is why, and it's because they let their environment get stale. They're not updating, they're not looking for patches, they're not going through security advisories and things like that.
I was on my one of the computers here at the house because I run Macs and Windows, and one of the Windows ones was had an update available just for like Windows Defender, and that's a 3-second no reboot update. And I'm like, why are you waiting on me? Like, I know it's a home PC. I know it doesn't have group policy applied to it. I know it's something I could control, but why is the default behavior not silently upgrade that in the background? Right. Yeah. Right. So the proactiveness of and thoroughness of your security posture, it matters.
Yeah. I mean, it amazes me, honestly, when I see things like, behind the shoulder of somebody that you're working with, or even to your point, at home or at the library or something like that. You see the little update button in the browser just sitting there, and it's like, for me, I'm like, as busy as I am and as busy as I can be, like, I know that I'm going to hit that button, it's going to close my browser, and it's going to bring it back up and bring everything back the way that it was. And to your point, that's a very, very small amount of seconds, maybe 3 seconds, maybe 5 seconds, maybe even 10 seconds, depending on the computer that you're using. But, oh my goodness, it's so important. Because if you're just sitting there, not updated, and you continue to look at that update button over and over and over again for days, weeks, months, like you think about how vulnerable you're just kind of sitting there. And I honestly, I hate to see it. If the update button comes up in my browser, I'm like, all right, fine, click, wait a couple of seconds, it comes back up, and I'm like, all right, on with the show.
Okay, good. I'm not saying I'm going to change my avatar on our shared chat services just to be like a little update required button just to trigger you. I would never do that, but it's interesting to think about, don't you think?
Yeah. That I'll say that'll get my attention, but at the same time, I expect for it to be over in 3 seconds, Jared. So.
So that's interesting. There you go. So that's some value for audiences. If Harvey's not responding to you, you're slacking him, you're IMing him, you're texting him. Boom, change that icon, right? He's got to get right on that. It's just he probably can't go to sleep that night.
Change it to an update button. I'll pay attention to you, but you got 3 seconds. That's the deal.
That's a deal. There we go. Cool, dude. We can bring it in for a landing. Always a pleasure, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Same for me. Love being able to get on here and do this with you and kind of share what we know and what we see with the masses.
Good deal. We can pick it back up next week. Andy should be back with us then. And till then, all the best.
Same to you, sir. I'll talk to you next week.
Cool. Bye.